Okay, welcome back to Hindustan Astrology. I'm Katya, and today I have on a very dear guest, Jane DeForest. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Kendra, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Me too. I don't know if you guys saw her at the Conscious Life Expo. We both took part in the virtual exhibit hall, and we met there in February and have struck up a friendship. And Jane is an amazing, intuitive medium channel artist. So this means that she not only is a medium where she channels, different multi-dimensions, but she also is an artist. So as she is receiving messages and information, she draws pictures that, when I got my reading done for you, I was blown away about how accurate you got some of the faces of the people we were talking about. And she also draws things that she doesn't see. And so Jane has an amazing background in both art, but also spiritual studies. So tell us a little bit about the training that you went through to be an intuitive artist.
I'd love to. Thank you, Ketcha. Well, specifically, being an intuitive artist was a profession that never even occurred to me because I didn't know that it existed. But I've been trained as a visual artist since I was a young girl. I always knew I wanted to be an artist. I went to Interlochen Arts Academy and the Rhode Island School of Design and ended up painting murals in people's homes and businesses and offices. And I painted beautiful scenes of nature. I painted jungles in people's bedrooms. I painted masterpiece reproductions, which is really where that was so much teaching, was copying the masters, which is actually how artists got their formal training during the Renaissance. So I thought that was fascinating. But I would paint a whole room to look like outer space with rockets, and especially love children's rooms. And in my process of painting, many of the homes in which I was doing my murals were really gorgeous homes because they could afford to pay me the fee to come and paint their homes. Mm-hmm. And what I found in these beautiful homes was there was a lot of suffering. And I found myself alone in the home with often the wife, who was really miserable. And it taught me so much about what money can buy and what it can't buy. And in that process, I used not only my natural intuitive ability, but my process of my artwork to do sessions for them and to help them get in touch with what's authentic within them, get in touch with ancestors on the other side or children that they'd lost. And in that process, I was able to help them overcome regrets and connect really deeply. So that was really moving for me. And I eventually transitioned into doing less painting and doing more sessions. At the same time, I was having a series of opening experiences. I wouldn't say that I'm a natural psychic, although I do have a propensity and a fascination with it. And I do think there's a lot to be said for that which draws you, that which invites you, the muse that calls. When I was small, I certainly knew when grown-ups were lying. I knew things I shouldn't know. I was able to separate my consciousness from my body. I was able to communicate with trees and other living things in the backyard. But I didn't think that was unusual. And frankly, I don't think that's unusual for children who are that is I think that's our natural state, is to have this intuition and this understanding that all things are alive and that we're connected and that we can talk to animals and trees. I think our society, I'm convinced our society is so upside down and really brainwashes, beats that out of young children. So by the time they're in 3rd or 4th grade, they believe that Santa Claus isn't real.
Right.
So I had some opening experiences. One was in the Amazon jungle, and it was very fascinating because I came to understand that the Amazon has a consciousness. The whole place is really almost like a altered state of consciousness if you go in with the same, with an open mind and an open heart. It was then that I realized I was able to read people's minds, and I had a very unusual experience of getting a sense of urgency running through the jungle in my bare feet, which you don't do in the jungle.
Right.
And and of actually, I believe, intervening in what looked like a very dangerous situation with one of my friends who I was down there with. And it was very unusual because I realized that something had entered me, guided me, and safely got me to where I was able to help someone and save them. These mystical experiences are really opening, I believe, opening experiences that if we allow them, it can transform us from our mundane selves to and get in touch with who we really are. As time passed, I started to have more unusual experiences and knowing things. And because of the environment in which I grew up, I really didn't have a prejudice against it. My brilliant PhD family thought such things were interesting, perhaps, but not important. But I wasn't raised to believe it was the work of the devil or something that should be shut down. And actually, they encouraged creativity and talking to Queen Mab, Queen of the Fairies. And so there was a certain magical underlay to my very academic upbringing. I'm severely dyslexic, so I couldn't read the books on the bookshelves in the library of the home I grew up in. So I had to find another way to perceive information to be able to survive. One of the opening experiences that changed my life was in the Great Pyramid of the Giza Plateau in the granite box in the King's Chamber. Now, it's often called a sarcophagus, but I don't think it is a sarcophagus because no mummy was ever found in it. Actually, no mummy was ever found in any pyramid.
Exactly. No.
So
You don't want to know about that, but I'll just let you talk.
So perhaps it isn't a tomb. And it was a Greg Braden tour, awesome Greg Braden. And this was many moons ago. It was in 96. And we all wore white. That's back in the day when you could do ceremony in the King's Chamber in this way. Now things have changed a lot. But there were 33 of us and we all held hands and we were chanting and taking turns laying in the granite box. And it was unearthly. It was, as time went by, more and more unearthly. And when I had my chance to lie in the box, I had a vision. It sort of gets me verklempt just to tell this story, but I had a vision and heard a voice that spoke to me that was beyond words. And the vision that I had was a green egg in the shape of a puzzle. And I had an overwhelming sense of love and the presence of wisdom. And this communication to me said that this was the universe and that the universe was elegantly simple and so complex that I couldn't even comprehend how complex it was. And that this beauty of creation was profound. I felt these words in my body of the profound experience of what creation was. It's a little hard to describe. It was ineffable. So it's really, in a sense, hard to describe in words, but that doesn't stop me from trying to communicate it. And with these opening experiences, I more and more embraced the mystery, which brought me to the mystery schools. When I was a girl, I was taken to Europe by my family, and we went to Pompeii. of course, I thought this was pretty dreary walking through, I'd rather go to the beach, but they made me. I always called this, museum cultural abuse, dragging me through museums. Now, of course, I see how lucky I was, but I remember being in Pompeii, and there's called a House of the Mysteries. And there's a huge mural, which is a very different style than the little Pompeian murals that you see, which is indicative of the style. And there were women painted on the walls. And I remember that I was remembering something, and I couldn't put my finger on what I was remembering. And I just kept asking, what is this? What is this mystery? And my grandparents and my the information in the booklet that you'd get would say they don't know. Nobody knows. It's a mystery. So I just became compelled by this ancient mystery schools, and I've been to Egypt to study the ancient mystery schools and try to understand what it is. And recently was in Eleusis, which was the epicenter of the ancient mystery schools in the Western world. And I did several sessions there, just documenting what I was receiving. And there is so much to share about these experiences that I won't hear, but just to say that it's as if I've been called. I've been called not just to communicate with people's, dead relatives, but to somehow, I feel, be part of this awakening that I believe is the goddess rising, which is the feminine knowing that is within all of us. And so I use my artistic ability, I use my intuitive knowing in a process, and I can show you some examples, when I'm reading someone, to be able to access nonlinear information, as well as document what I'm seeing in non-ordinary state of consciousness. So,
Wow.
yeah, so that's sort of a long answer.
No, this is what people want to hear. They want to hear your experiences, and especially about, this, new era that we're coming into of the divine feminine, the resurgence, and the breaking point. They always say it's darkest before the dawn, and that we have to, hit rock bottom as, as a culture, as a planet, before we can come back again. And so it's important for people to hear your stories. And your stories, you have written a book. Can you show us your book? Because it's so exciting. I cannot wait to receive it and read it. My glasses on here. Love Never Dies. See, and I'm just going to tell everybody right now that my mother hooked me up with her because of her book. Love Never Dies is something that my mother wrote to my stepsister when she was broken up from her father. And my little stepsister was devastated and missed mom so much. And mom wrote her a letter, most beautiful letter. And what she said was, love never dies, in capital letters. And we read that before her funeral. And it was like an anthem the whole time we were there. And when I saw that on your book, on the virtual exhibit hall booth that you have, I said, oh my gosh, my mom. So my mom, who has passed on, has hooked me up with a medium who is also an artist. My mother's an artist. And I think it's so fantastic that you communicate. As you said, you're severely dyslexic, so words were difficult for you. So your means of communication was art. And that's something that's so important for children, especially today with the high numbers of autistic and, autistic spectrum children that have a difficulty assimilating to their environment, and communicating themselves. It's so important to teach these skills of art. And so tell us just a little bit about what's in your book, what people can expect to read about. Sure.
And you reminded me of something also, that I do pro bono work, and I work with, I wasn't intending to show this, but I work with children in the school system and take them on shamanic journeys for to get their power animal. This is a mask I made out of a paper plate and electrical or telephone wire. And it's so profound for these children who are aching to express themselves. And art and creativity is such a natural and important way. So I serving children is one of my greatest ways that I can serve. So I'm very grateful about that.
Now, do you write about that in the book, or
I don't write about the service work that I do volunteering in the school system, but I have done it for over 10 years. And it's, I'll tell you, children start closing down around third, fourth grade.
Mhm.
And so teaching children in terms that won't get me kicked out of the school, like shamanic journey isn't something that I would say. I'd say a guided visualization to your imagination station.
Well, that's very smart, because, you know, this whole dumbing down process started on the Native American reservations. And this is what Chief Golden Light Eagle has been speaking about, you know, is what happened to his grandfathers, and how talking to trees, talking to clouds made the white people think that they were crazy, and they were put into mental hospitals for that. It's a long story, I won't go into it, but I mean, that dumbing down started on the reservations, and it's still going on. Luckily, my daughter is an artist, and, you know, has been able to communicate, you know, what she feels that way. But a lot of children don't have access to materials or knowledge or support. So it's really important that artists reach out, especially right now with the pandemic and the mental health crisis that we have. Art therapy is so important.
It's so important. And interestingly enough, when I'm reading someone, I see when someone's in the process of creation that their whole energy field lights up. Their seventh chakra, their second chakra, everything's brighter. It's as if, and this is my contention, that when the Bible talks about being made in God's image, that in fact we return the favor by making God a bipedal hominid. But in fact, what that really means is that we are little creators, and that by creating, that's when we resonate in our God selves. Now, those are just words, but when I see people getting creative and their whole field changes, I am convinced. That's my own personal conviction.
Yeah, and today's Beltane, it's the day of the sacred fire. It's the day of the union of the god and goddess. And I wore orange today to celebrate that, and it has green in it, and I've got green in the background. But that's just to show, you know, that people always think of Beltane as a green holiday. And yes, it is, but it's also orange. It's about the fire of creation that happens, the spark that happens between a man and a woman, and how that creates a child. You know, that's creation. And, you know, there's so many ways to create. And I mean, I'm not an artist like you are, or like my daughter or my mother is, but what I love to create with, like lately I've been playing with aromatherapy and making my own skincare. And for me, that's a creative expression, because that's like, I'm making something, you know, I'm not just saying something, words just fly away, right?
Right. And people say, oh, well, I'm creative when I cook. And I say, well, yes, but when I look at them energetically, people don't have the same dynamism when they're cooking, for example. But what I do see as the act of creation. Now, I find that's diminished if people are attached to the outcome. So oftentimes I give assignments when I have sessions, which people either do or they don't do. But one of my assignments is the make stuff assignment. And for 30 days, and you can experiment, and your viewers might consider experimenting with this if they like. For 30 days, every day, have an allotted time, 10 minutes to half an hour to an hour, depending on your life. And spend some time making something. Just get, I suggest you get the 96 box of Crayola crayons with the sharpener in the back, you know, the kind you probably
yeah.
you didn't get because it was the most expensive one. I say go splurge on that box and get yourself some unlined paper, and you can put some chants on or some kind of sacred music and draw. Just draw. Don't worry about it being good. Just draw. And when you are done, you can admire it, you can hang it on the wall, but destroy it. So you can burn it in a safe environment, or you can bury it or rip it up. But the process of creation without being attached to the outcome somehow magnifies the process.
And I guess that's why the Buddhists, after they make their sand mandalas, sweep it away.
This was my conclusion. You're so insightful. This is actually where I got the idea, and it's interesting. You and I haven't had this conversation. I was in San Francisco, and it was I think the De Young Museum, and they flew in Tibetan monks who were all wrapped in saffron robes, and they were chanting, they were chanting, you know, it all seemed very exotic to me. And they had a circle type of mandala they were creating, and they had little files and blocks of multicolored sand that were in block form, and they'd file them, and it would go down through a little chute, and it was an elaborate design. So this wasn't some abstract expression. This was a major creation with a template they were following, and they were praying the whole time. They finished it, the public came, they celebrated it, there was prayers, there were ceremonies, there was accolades, and then one Tuesday morning, they just came in and swept it away. And that impacted me so much about impermanence as an artist, knowing what it takes to create something so perfect and then letting it go. So that's intense, you know, that's hard to do for people, but 10 minutes a day or 15, and that gets the juices flowing. That gets the relationship with the muse, the inspiration. The Greeks and the Romans saw that as a personification, as a beautiful being, whatever the muse, and maybe it is, but gets that relationship strengthened. So after that's done, now you have the neural pathways. You know, if you want to talk science, or dancing with the muse, if you want to be poetic, to apply that to your next magnum opus.
Right. Well, and I'm an improvisational dancer, and one of my favorite things to do with my own spiritual time is, you know, I'll put on especially there's one particular Ganesha Arati, which is an offering with fire and flowers to the deity. But I love this one certain track, and I love to dance in front of Ganesha and just channel. I just, you know, whatever spirit wants me to dance to it. But I've been doing that a lot, and it's a gift because, you know, it's not recorded. It's gone after you're done dancing.
I love that.
You know, it keeps resonating out, you know.
And it's sacred. You're not just, you know, rocking out to whatever. You made a prayer, you've done an offering, and your dance, you know, your free form in alignment with your high self movement is in offering to something higher than yourself. So exactly, that's a good application for it. That's not specifically drawing with crayons. So yeah, thank you. I like it.
Now, the book that you wrote, though, is more about your experiences with being a medium, more so than the artistic side, right?
Well, yeah. So what I have in the book is a collection of stories. I think stories are so powerful. I mean, it's something that we can relate to and enter into a relationship with, but it is illustrated. So, for example, one of the stories is, let me show you an illustration. This is actually spirit communication with a woman who on the other side inspired me to write this book. And this is the illustration here. Oops. I don't know if, oh, here's
Oh,
it there.
wow.
You can see her face here.
Mhm.
And this is the symbol with which she communicated to her mother. And it's a great blue heron. And here you can see wrapped in her hair is a boy. It's all in a heart. And this is an illustration that's in the book. Now, her name is Kara, and the family allowed me in this story to use real names. So on Mother's Day, this woman at 30 went out to a gun range with her boyfriend and turned the gun on herself,
Oh,
leaving a 11-year-old boy.
ugh.
Sorry, it just hits me to, and Mother's Day is coming up right here in the next week or so. So I always reach out to the mom to visit with her. So she came to me for a session, and she was an acquaintance. But through the sessions that I did with her, and we live in close proximity, so over the year that I secretly committed to Kara to walk with her once a week, we became dear friends. And in this story, I talk about how I communicated and the process that I used, because it isn't really that fluid. And I really want people to understand that it's stop and start and pretty close and missed it. But yet I was able to forge through and get information that there was no way that I could know, which is exactly how I like to work. When I do a session with someone, I'll spend the first 5 or 10 minutes just reading them and determining information that there's no way that I could know. And the client rates my accuracy. I like to be within 80 to 95% accurate.
You guys, for me, she was 100%. I'm serious. There was nothing that did not resonate with me. Very good.
And if I can't read someone, I'll return their money. That, it doesn't happen too often, but sometimes.
Right. And let me just say a word about that, because, I started at New Age People bookstore in Indianapolis in the 90s at, doing psychic fairs. And so I did a lot of, in the trenches kind of work back in the 90s. And if you don't let somebody read you, they can't. There's something you have to do to put your guard down, energetically, emotionally. And if you come into a reading with the attitude of, oh, let's see what she can show me. Like, let's see how good she is. Guess what? You're not going to get that good of a reading. So you really, it's a meeting her halfway kind of thing, where if you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you're going to get the best reading ever. If you put up your guard and you got your prickly porcupine quivers out there, it won't work. You got to flip over, and be vulnerable. So
It's true. It's true. And people have to be open. And honestly, the secret is through the heart.
yes.
And Ketcha, some people I don't want to read. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's, but most people are lovely, and it's an honor to see their soul. I have to say, it's such an honor to be able to see deep into the light of people, who they really are.
Yes.
But-
And like attracts like. I always say that whoever I give a reading to, it was destiny, because, you will just attract the people, and you as a client, will attract the right kind of reader for you that can resonate with you.
It's so true. I love my clients. I mean, I've had clients for years, and and then their family members, and it's such an honor. But I wanted to bring this story to a happier ending. So Kara took her life, and I saw, when I was reading her mother, that there was a great bird, and that bird was flying. And it was flying from east to west. And I saw this and communicated it to her mother, who was profoundly moved, because when this happened, when she took her life, she was watching the son, her grandson, Kara's son, at home, and they heard the life flight outside that was flying from east to west. And oh, I'm getting body chills. So she said, come to the window, and let's send love to that life flight. In that life flight was her daughter and the mother of her grandson being transported to the trauma hospital while they were sending this. And then soon after, a giant bird, we have a blue heron, and if you're
Yeah, we have some here too in Indiana.
they are huge. They're giant birds.
They're cranes, yeah.
And she saw as she was, this was a message. It wasn't a random occurrence. Saw this giant bird fly so close to her house from east to west that its wings touched her gutter. And I saw that in the reading, and that Kara was telling her she was in that bird and that she was still alive.
Mm-hmm.
What I also saw in the reading was that if all things worked out, the boy would turn into a lovely young man. He was like a stallion. He was strong, he was independent, and he would turn out to have a good life, and things would work out. Now he's out of college. He doesn't look, he's not unlike that. This was drawn when he was 11 or 12 years old. And he's turned out well. But it was this soul that would get me out of bed at 3 a.m. to write my book. And I wasn't going to write a book. I can't write a book. I'm dyslexic. I can't read that well. How am I going to write a book? 3 o'clock, I found myself writing her story, because writing a book was out of the question. So I would write it, and this took forever. It was arduous and dreadful, and
it's a birthing process. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Painful.
Well, yes, and one story led to another, and the book came together, and it's won 3 awards. It's translated into Spanish and Japanese, and from what I've been told, it's been a great help to people.
Yes, and it's going to go much further than that. Honestly, I see a movie coming out of this. This is what I think this is leading to, because people need to hear these stories of multidimensionality. You know, this is a problem we have in Vedic astrology. I love my teachers. I love everyone in it, but you know, this adherence to academic patterns, to scripture, to, you know, the way things should be, is a little too strong. And I think this is a part of the return of the divine feminine in astrology as well. We have all these, you know, new female astrologers, such as myself, who have an intuitive, multidimensional approach. And it doesn't mean that we don't adhere to the traditional patterns. It means that while we're applying them, we're listening too. You know, we're listening to spirit and our intuition, and you have to blend the two together. If your heart is telling you that something is wrong, you know, and that you see it a different way, then you need to listen to that, you know. And unfortunately, a lot of very traditional male astrologers don't do that. You know, they just go by what it should be.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that when we had our session, is you would look at what's going on and give me sort of the academic interpretation, and then you would look out and you said, but what I'm getting is that it looks like, and I was like, yeah, that's a hit. That's a definite hit, what you just said. So that example, I think, is good both for practitioners of these feminine arts, but also regular business people or just affairs of the heart, is being able to get in touch through our intuition to what is accurate, what's real. And what I teach my students, and I do teach them how to use art. You don't have to be an artist, but how to access your own natural intuition through the chakras, is the body doesn't lie. Your brain will lie to you all day long.
That's right.
He can't be cheating on me. I mean, no, but your stomach's upset. You might be having dreams that is telling you that something's not right. So that's a really fast way just for anybody who's watching this to start to get in touch with that feminine divine wisdom that is inherent. And it's important because we do, especially with these times coming, need to have some kind of internal compass to help us, because it's gnarly, and it's going to get even gnarlier, if that's a word. So start to know.
So let's talk about that. I mean, what are you getting with where we're at with, this global crisis that we've been in? What it means, and where are we going with this? What do you think?
Okay, so there's a class that I teach about once a year in January, and it's called Hacking the Future. And as a class, we actually journey 1, 10, and 100 years into the future. And then we gather and share the information.
Wow. So it's almost like remote viewing.
It is remote viewing. That's exactly what it is. And I use drawing, so we're able to. The nice thing about drawing is that.
Are you going to teach this class again? Because I want to take it.
You bet. I do it every January. Well, it's just one class, but I do also teach a course about developing intuition using art. Intuition and Art 101, where we not only learn a little bit about the history of the oracular tradition, and that it is very natural and normal, but also how we can connect with our allies. We all have allies. So a Christian might call it a guardian angel, and an indigenous person might call it a power animal. But we all have not only these spiritual allies, but ancestors on the other side.
And star relatives too.
What?
Star relatives.
Yeah, perhaps. I definitely have the guides that I have. One of them could certainly, my healer guide is very multidimensional. That could certainly be a characteristic. And some people do have guides that do seem alien, but these allies are ones that indigenous people work with all the time and help us to be able to get this information. We also, as I said, receive information through all of our chakras. For example, the seventh chakra, we might get inspiration from on high. That would look like, doing, I got it. I'm going to build a thingy.
Right. Whatever that thingy is.
And the thingy comes intact, and you unpack it or unravel it. It doesn't come as something that you construct. It is an intact concept. That comes in the seventh. The sixth chakra, where the home of our third eye, our pineal, often that's where we do remote viewing, or we have a picture of something that comes to us, or a visionary dream. Our fifth chakra, oftentimes people receive information through communication, through hearing, or through taste. Like when I'm doing a session with someone, I can taste if they're bitter, or I can hear that they're lying, or I can. And most people can we're stronger in some than others, but the heart is, this is the boss. So when we have an open heart, this information flows like that. And frankly, that's the secret, I think, of my success in accuracy, is that I open my heart in love with each client sitting across the table or on Zoom with me. Is I really love them, and that opens these channels. So if you feel, your heart will tell you that your tummy will get sick to your stomach if something's wrong. Now, if we listen to it, that's a different story. Of course, I have that same problem. Our second chakra is our creative chakra, also our sexual chakra. We have those feelings. Men are very strong intuitively, both with the gut feeling and business. Like that's a great opportunity. I'm going to buy that building, or that job. I'm not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
But sexually, men have a good sense intuitively of which women are worth they're spending their hard-earned money. And we women often have a sense of attraction, or sense someone staring at us, or feeling that. And then our first chakra is our connection to mother. So many, many different cultures understand that there is a communication through animals. For example, owls are classic harbingers of death, or communications between those on the other side. Clouds, people can read clouds or get information through weather. So that's part of what I do. And then I teach people how to use journey, classic shamanic journey, to be able to draw and express themselves. But to answer your question, that was sort of an aside. As far as what's coming down the pike, there is a takedown, and what we know as reality, we've assigned meaning to, like little pieces of paper with dollar signs on them, and the construct of time, or what science tells us is what matter is made out of. All these things are ideas and constructs, and there's a certain rearrangement, a dissolving of what was, and in that we need to be careful because things are falling apart. But the more we can align with what's emerging, which is really the divine female, it's a new process, but we have to be aligned with what's authentic, because there's a lot of trickery going on right now. And what this false nonsense is falling away. And if we're too attached to it, it's going to magnify the misery, I guess is what I'd say.
Well, they say what you pay attention to amplifies, right? So, what you water grows. So, yes, there's lots of people doing horrible things on this planet, but why are we giving them attention? Can somebody answer that for me? Shouldn't we be giving attention to the people who are doing good, which are the majority of people? We're giving so much attention to this small minority that are just assholes. I'm sorry, but they are. And, I'm like, where's the good news network? I turn on the news, this is bad news, bad news, bad news. I'm like, you know what? I'm sorry. That's not the majority of what's going on. I see, when I have my personal interactions, when I go to the grocery store, I go to the pharmacy or my hairdresser, I see nothing but kind people who are going out of their way to help others. And that needs a little bit more attention. Why are these bad people getting all the press?
Yeah, and what I see from the subtle realms is that negativity, fear, these are all energies. So if you can imagine where your focus is, what you're thinking of is what your emotional state follows and your energetic state follows. So if you're joyful, let's assume it's golden light. If you're fearful, maybe it's putrid green color. Well, there are energies that feed off our energy, and it's shocking. It's terrifying, actually. I've had people come in with some
right?
gnarly. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the negative energy, they call it loosh, that they suck from us if we're feeling, a whole stadium of people being fearful, and there's entities that suck that off. It's called loosh.
Loosh, okay. Well, I'll tell you, I've seen it, and I've actually been seeing it more lately, and it's sort of surprising. But once you see that, it's a wake-up call to really try to keep planting intention, joyful intention, positive visualization. And I really do believe that the way through this, what will seem in a way like a lot of destruction, is your community. I know we all want to save the world, but to take care of those, your family members, your animals, your land, prey on your land, take care of your trees, your community. It's a lot about being local. And I
Yeah.
do, and I do feel that is the secret. And it's something that I actually saw in a very powerful vision, was that the way that I was going to make it through these times was what I just described, was taking care of those people. So
Yeah, it's like, you know, they say you can't change the world, but you can change your world, the people in your world, the people around you immediately. I mean, you know, lawyers change the world, right? We can't all be lawyers. We may all want to be lawyers, but you know, it's like they have that kind of power to make social change, but social change really happens at the microcosm. It happens with the people in your life, the people you interact with, and then it ripples out from there. So, you know, I don't really think that we're helpless in these times. But what I don't understand, and maybe you can help me understand this, but what is greed? Like, I don't understand people who make a profit and are concerned about making a profit off of the misery and subjugation of others, you know, like people in human trafficking, or people that are, you know, involved in these horrible, you know, horrible things. Like, what is turning them away from the light?
right. So that's a complex question, and I'll answer it the very best that I can. Now, this is only from my knowledge, and then what I'm sharing from you is the research that I've done, my own personal experience, my own personal testimony, and the research that I've done from personally doing readings. So that would be different than reading research. But so if this is our body and our physical experience on earth, this is mother, this is father, this is our spirit. That union is our human experience, perhaps at conception or birth. I think it varies, frankly. We go through our life on earth, and then when it's time to die, our body returns to Mother Earth and our spirit returns to heaven or to the Father. What I see is that part of this disease that's going on, this spiritual disease in this dimension on this planet, has to do with starting to get separated from our soul while we're alive. And I do see people where their soul is almost slightly removed from their body. And it's as if the soul can't handle the level of negativity that the body has a consciousness. So assume it's in a way almost a primitive consciousness, because it includes greed, lust, you know, the 7 deadly sins, and that this spirit aspect of ourselves is what makes us human. It is what our conscience, it's what keeps us on the straight and narrow, and it's compassion, it's kindness, and so forth.
Empathy, yeah.
Empathy. So what happens is people seem to get separated from that and run amok. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect, and this is that there does seem to be some energies that can enter people when their soul isn't entirely inhabiting their consciousness. So Ram Dass talks about when he met his guru, is that when he touched him, everywhere he touched him, he was there. And that's where Ram Dass learned how the idea of be here now, of be present in yourself. And so when people are abusing people, when they're focused, obsessed with greed, or consumed with envy, it's as if the soul seems to slightly separate. And that can allow other entities to enter this.
Okay,
These,
that makes sense to me. That totally makes sense to me. See, no, I mean, I've heard these concepts, I've understood them, but it's like, I'm not from here, I'm not from this planet. So these human ways baffle me. And sometimes it's hard to align, what's going on, even though I understand soul separation. I understand entity possession and, the reptilians trying to take over and the whole concept of negativity and subterfuge. But when I see people, abusing a dog or, I mean, just a child, it's like, I can't, my mind can't grasp it, And so when I understand it from the place of you are separating, your soul from your body, that makes sense.
yeah, and I don't understand exactly what the big picture is, but I will say that I have had a sense that there is a power behind the power.
Mm.
So anything that we see that's in power isn't in power, but there is a power behind it. And I do want to say there is an element of artificial intelligence. And in one of my visions, I saw a red webbing network all over the planet. So we have a big problem. And I think the least of it is where we see it trickle down into abusing children and animals, which is horrific. But I see it coming from, I do see it coming from something else. So then the question is, what do we do? I mean, these are big problems. These are powerful dark forces that are beyond little old me.
Right.
And so what I try to share with people is their own power. And it really is what I see. It's not just oh, you go girl. I mean, it is really what I see is a multi-dimensional power centered in the heart, a torus field that does go out to about the fingertips in a regular healthy person, a lot more if you're meditating on your spiritual path, less if you're perhaps a little sick. But this power is this power of creation. When we have this power of creation in our multidimensional self, we can do miracles. And so that's part of my make stuff assignment. That's part of me encouraging people to think positive or focus on what they want is, oh yeah, we can change the world. We absolutely can. And we don't necessarily have to be a constitutional lawyer, or we don't have to be a congressperson. We can change the world from our backyard. And
we're all
knowing that
little energy generators. We're just
a little
generating
energy, yeah.
frequencies, and they spread out. And I think that's the most simple way we can look at this takedown is, once you start reclaiming your own power, then we're unstoppable.
Agreed. And, a breakdown is a breakthrough, Lily Tomlin says. And this chaos is, maybe it's a construct or an idea of some evil forces behind the power to enslave us more than we are. I'm not sure. But chaos is opportunity. And since all the patterns are being repatterned, we can repattern it in a way that we want. And well, that's fine, Jane. You might say, well, how do you do that? Start small, draw it by getting in, or dance it, or sing it.
And let's face it, a big problem on this planet is not just race, it's class. It's about wealth and who has it and who doesn't. And so I think a big part of this transformation, and honestly, to get us not focusing on race, is to focus on, gaining wealth. And a lot of that is cryptocurrency. You know, this is the future. This is where it's going. And this is going to empower so many people to do, you know, what they're here to do instead of being enslaved by whatever, you know, whatever force is holding them down. I mean, wealth is the big key, I think, to this. And, you know, in the United States, we have 2023 and 2024, we have the next great American eclipses. Just like we had the great solar eclipse that went over North America, you know, and what was it, 2017, you know, and it was in Tennessee and everybody was lighting up their cameras. Well, we're having that again. And I really think when that happens, we're going to have a lot of things happen. You know, crypto is going to come, you know, really come into full force. It's coming in now. If you guys haven't gotten in at all, get on now, get on Coinbase, get on Celsius, you know, buy some crypto, and in a couple of years, it's going to double. That's where it's going. And then, you know, it's ET disclosure. That's what's coming up with these eclipses. I mean, it's happening right over the United States moon, which is in Shatabishak, going up into Pisces. And I really feel that the secrets are coming out. You know, right now Neptune is in Aquarius, Jupiter's there. There's going to be an explosion of hidden secrets about ET. And I mean, already we've got, you know, the Artemis Moon project with NASA that's going to the moon by 2023. And then by 2030, they're going to be on Mars. So you guys, I mean, hold on to your hats, because you think it's crazy now? It's going to get even crazier.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because one of the predictions I made this year was that there was going to be some kind of information come forward. You could call it disclosure, I guess, but it was going to make people stop in the kitchen, you know, when they're listening to it on the radio or whatever, and
Right.
go sit down. And I saw people driving in the car, listening to the radio and having to pull over. It's some kind of information that's that shocking. It's
They're
not
finally going to have to disclose that they've been in cahoots with ET and that they're here. Hello.
it wasn't going to be single cell amoebas on Mars. It was something, it's going to be something big.
There's so much evidence. I mean, it is not woo-woo at this point, okay? When we've got the former defense minister of Canada, Paul Hellyer, discussing ET, and he has written a book about it and he talks about it. I mean, come on, you guys, he's credible. There's so many credible military witnesses. Rendlesham, you know, Rendlesham is like for real documented modern occurrence of ET happening at a US base in England. I mean, you know, Roswell, there's still a lot of speculation, but Rendlesham, no, it's documented. It was there. So, you know, the woo-woo factor is going to go away and people are going to go, oh my gosh, you know, there are facts behind this. And, you know, people are coming from many, many nations to this planet. And it's been happening for a long time, you know. So it's going to be really, I think, relieving in a way in the next couple of years. Truth's going to come out, and, you know, it's never fun at first. People are going to be shocked, and I think that the markets will reflect that. There will be some turmoil, but I mean, we got to look at the long haul, right? So the next 100 years, I mean, I'll be out of here in 25 years, you know? I'm thinking about my grandkids and their kids and the next generation. And it takes time on this planet, but I feel like this is where it's going.
I would concur. And I think that if I were to summarize, it sounds like we haven't even talked about this, but that it's gnarly in the short term. And as I said, focus focus on your people, focus on your land, focus on your community. And that for the long haul, and this is what I saw from Hacking the Future that we've been doing several years now, is what people see is that there is a certain period of chaos and upset, that there is a restructuring. There's a restructuring of money as we know it, political boundaries perhaps, and or structures, that there is a change of consciousness. So there's, could look either like we're hit with a blast from an electromagnetic cloud we're traveling through, or the sun's hitting us or something, but there's a revelation where people are it's like an egg, like they're cracked out of their consciousness into a broader one. So it's like a quick evolution, and that there does seem to be a reduction of the population from what people have reported from my sessions. In 100 years, we don't seem to have as many people as we do now.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's a reflection of disease or birth rates, but it does seem greener. It seems to be more in harmony. It seems that we have a different kind of power, and that power is in some kind of device that seems to be about the size of a refrigerator.
Huh.
And it's clean, and somehow people can be off a grid, so they don't have to be like on an
Free energy. Yeah.
yeah, something like
But
this.
what comes with free energy is the consciousness to use it, because I think we have it now, but they don't want us to have it because there are so many jerks in the world who will use it against people, you know? So they don't want us, our consciousness needs to rise to the point where we can handle this technology.
That is that you're absolutely right. And as I said, you and I haven't talked about this, but that's exactly what seems to happen with this evolution. And this evolution seems to be a jump, and it happens over a short period of time. And people are like, it's as if in the fairy tale, the spell is broken in the Ice Queen's castle. The hero is able to get a hair from the monster and
Right.
return it to the stream of eternal life, and the spell is broken, and the ice sculpture of all the people that the Ice Queen has encased in ice melts or cracks. And then people emerge, and their consciousness, they remember who they are and why they're here and what they have to do. And so it's not unlike that. It has a fairy tale quality of it.
We do have a spell on us. There is a dark force that has put a spell on us, for sure.
That's right. And I did see that in my vision, which was very clear, and it was red lines, and it was a grid, and it is connected to AI. AI is the demon itself, actually, my opinion. But that but it isn't sentient, although I believe it's trying to become sentient by entering living sentient beings. So warning, but there is always peril in a fairy tale. There's always the perilous cliff that the hero and heroine have to cross to get to the ice castle to break the spell. There's always a sense of peril. The hero and heroine have to go up to the north, to where no one's ever gone before, the forbidden place, to bring back the secret key that can save us all. So I don't think it's a time to sit back, put your feet up, and watch TV. I think it's a time to turn the TV off, start doing your spiritual work, start gardening, start
talking with people. This is what I keep telling people. I'm like, I have friends from all backgrounds, Black, white, Indian, Mexican, European, whatever. And I will talk with them about race. Yes, we need to have these discussions, casual discussions about race, like what you see on the news, what's going on, because the rest of the world are not having these discussions. We here in America are pushing, these issues. And it's uncomfortable at first, but if we can all just, give everyone the benefit of the doubt and just be kind to each other, we need to have these discussions, because that's how I feel like you're affecting people around you. Is, they say the pen is mightier than the sword, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so, yeah, the word
yeah,
is mightier than the sword.
yeah, and I think your point is well taken, is to interact with people on, on an individual basis. And, from what I see, and as far as past lives go, we incarnate in different races and different genders. So,
Different planets and dimensions.
that seems to be the case too, because I have actually been getting more and more what I call a hybrid soul. And that's a soul of someone who doesn't seem to incarnate on Earth too frequently. And they seem to incarnate in other places. And I'm getting more and more of these people. So it makes, and a lot of these people are younger. Some of them are kids. So it makes me wonder if we aren't having a wave of something's also happening that we're not understanding.
I
Um,
think Gaia is drawing us to her because she's hurting so bad. And so she's drawing frequencies from the rest of the universe to help her heal, because we're just a big burden to her right now. I'm sorry, she's so beautiful and has so much to give. And we're just sucking and wanting to go to Mars because we know that there's not going to be enough resources. It's like, come on, man. Like Biden says, come on, man. No, but I mean, really, we have to give Gaia a break. And she's calling help. She's called these kids to her to help her.
I think that's true. That's what I came to, is that there seems to be a meeting, hey, I'll meet you on Earth, early century. How about that? We see if we can't change this game, something like
That's
that.
right. We heard the call and we came running.
It does seem that way. And a lot of the people that I see are very old souls, and their focus is on service, on helping people. They have a wisdom that is galactic. It's beyond the 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 general neighborhood. It's also a deep connection to Mother, to seeing the life in all things, the indigenous understanding that all things are alive. Um, so I think the game ain't over yet, but I do think the more that people can turn the television off, focus on their creative energy on the shift, the more success we're going to have. Because I don't think it's writ. I think that that we need all hands on deck here to make sure that we right the ship.
Yeah, I agree. And it's overwhelming. And I think that especially a lot of, light workers get overwhelmed. But, you really don't, I mean, if you get overwhelmed, don't feel like you have to do a lot. Just holding the frequency of what you want to your intention on this planet is acting like a generator. And so I feel like, especially right now, mental health is so fragile, and people feel like they can't do anything to change the negativity they see around them. But really, they can, by just putting themselves in a positive state and acting like a generator.
Yeah, I think futility is again emanating that energy of putrid green color, and
Right.
and it's attracting, and it's sort of hard. It's hard to tell someone if I've got a client that's, feeling overwhelmed and they're not going to make a difference and why go on, or they're very afraid. It's hard to say what you're doing is it's going to make it worse, because that makes it more difficult to overcome, and the fear is magnified often. So I have to be very delicate how I communicate that.
Yeah, because you have to acknowledge it and say, yes, what you're feeling is real, but don't focus on it. It's like, they say, when you have something to cry about, don't unpack and live there, cry it out, pick up your things and go home,
And remember, you have allies. So
Mhm.
you have guides, you have angels, you have ancestors, you have totem animals. I have never read a person who doesn't have guides and allies.
And you've got creator's right there. All you have to do is say, hey, creator, please send me some help,
Right. Yeah, that too. This is an example of a typical reading that I do, and I draw while I'm doing a session.
Oh, Ganesha.
Yeah, I know you haven't seen this. So this is the client. This is her seventh chakra, very connected to the divine. So this is how I see connected to God. And this is her guide right here in the form of an elephant. Perhaps it is Ganesh.
That's
But this is a much more personal relationship than to the divine. Now, this is what I see. So,
yeah, we all have our own filters, right?
filters. And I think it's important to understand, sometimes God can be, like the universe, and it's so impersonal, but then we
Right.
also have very personal energies that are our own personal representatives, if you want. Like there
Right.
are, like our agents or our brokers, if you
Well,
will.
and that's what Jesus is supposed to be, right? Jesus is, in my interpretation, Jesus is supposed to be the personal, what you personify with God. It's not supposed to be what you worship, but that's me.
Right. And I think it's much easier to feel a personal relationship to a personification or like an intermediary, but it
Right.
isn't necessarily like someone else, some other human is being an intermediary.
Right.
This is how I see ancestors. I see ancestors on this side. I see guides on this side. These were people in her life. What were these? Oh, yes, these are people in her life, so that I was able to see what was going on. What's going on with her heart. These were choices that she had to make. So we were looking specifically at how do you make a decision? Is it door number 1 or door number 3? I'm also an animal communicator, and this was her dog who was very sick. So we had to look at why this dog was sick. As a matter of fact, it turned out that the food was tainted. I'm suspecting it was probably had Chinese poison or whatever they put in it.
Right.
But also I noticed that this dog had headaches in the spring and fall. And she said, well, yes, that's true. The dog seems to cry then. So it had some kind of sinus or allergy. So then she could take it to her vet. And I'm not a vet, but she could take that information to the vet, and they could work on some remedies for it. So this is what a
Beautiful.
typical drawing looks like in a session.
Yes. And it's very accurate too. Mine, the pictures were dead on. And I think, I'm a kinesthetic learner, but I do really well with visuals. Rather than giving me instructions on how to learn, like I do a lot better with visuals. And so seeing that helped me to connect, what you were trying to channel through. And, it's such a personal thing.
Yeah.
Because, it either looks like them or it doesn't look like them. There's a real emotion to your art.
And thank you. And why I love drawing. And really the technique that I use was inspired by my primary teacher post-mortem, um, uh, Ingo Swann. And Ingo Swann was the grandfather of remote viewing and the remote viewing program that the government used to spy on the Russians during the 70s and 80s. And this program was called Stanford Research Institute. And all kinds of amazing remote viewers came out of this. But I resonated with Ingo Swann. Well, actually, I would listen to him. He just died recently, although I never met him, so I can't claim him as my personal teacher, but I think of him as my personal teacher. And I read everything he ever wrote, which was difficult because I'm not a great reader, and he is so brilliant and so technical. But what he did, which was really brilliant, was come up with this technique of how to draw and use this sort of automatic drawing technique to draw accurate renderings of missile silos or whatever, which was halfway across the globe, in sort of an automatic technique. So I took that, I made it my own, and this is what I teach, but this is what I use. And what I came to understand is that when we take information and we turn it into a sentence and process it through our hand, which is, or usually our right hand, which is our left side of the brain, it takes a multidimensional concept and it flattens it. And the thing about art or drawing, and let's face it, we were all artists when we were 6 years old. So let's assume we still are.
Right. And then somebody told us that's good or that's bad, and either encourage us or discourage us.
That's right. And who cares if it's good? That's my whole premise for burning it. So
Thank you. See, that's that. Thank you. That gives people permission.
Yeah, you don't have, we all have an unhealthy relationship to perfection. I say lower your standards and be accurate or happy, either one. But he really helped me to understand that drawing helps us most accurately document and access this dimensional information, whether it's through a vision or intuition or skilled remote viewing or a dream. So when you wake up, you can keep a paper that doesn't have lining next to your bed and draw the information from your dream before you journal it, for example. And you'll be stunned by how much information that because you'll look at the drawing and you'll say, wow, you know, I hadn't thought of it, but maybe that's communicating X, Y, Z. And through the right brain, through drawing is really, I believe, how we get this intuitive, divine feminine, mother, goddess information that will really be our accurate compass to get us through this gnarly bit we've got coming up.
Right. You are so right. And, you know, and it really gives permission to people who don't feel like artists or who were shamed for their art or whatever to just use it as a journaling tool. I mean, you don't have to show it to anybody. No. You know, this is a tool for you to access your intuition. And if you guys just, you know, Google remote viewing, you'll find so much information about it. I mean, there's videos and blog posts and articles and books. And I mean, just so much information now. And, you know, just to my own little, you know, simplified version or definition of remote viewing versus being a psychic is that in remote viewing, there are procedures, and it is a way to harness your psychic ability, but to put it into a reasonable platform where you can analyze the information right away. And so this is actually what our government uses to gain information from whatever source they want. But it is used and it is verified and it works.
It does. And there's one other piece that I've developed myself, although I don't want to claim it because maybe somebody else developed it. You know, we pulled it from the Akasha, or
Right.
that level of archetypal consciousness where all thoughts are, that just doodling. So perhaps you can get into a meditative state of mind, focus on a question, do your prayer work, and doodle. If you're a dominant right hand, doodle with your left hand on line paper.
Absolutely.
And then gaze at this doodling as if it is a Rorschach test. And it's uncanny. The information will emerge from it, and you might see a face or a answer to your question, images, and it's very, very simple. It's in alignment with all different kinds of divination, whether it's tea leaf reading or uh, casting knuckles or looking
Right.
at smoke or whatever it is. But this is emerging from within you and you're looking at it. So it's not something from outside. You're not pulling cards in a tarot
Well,
spread.
it's actually a way to make your left and right brains work together.
Mhm.
Down the middle, we have the corpus callosum, which ties the two together. And when I was in graduate school, the best professor that I had, she was not only an astounding researcher, but she was the best teacher. She was the best instructor because she knew how to turn on the light bulb in her students' brains and get them to really learn. And Dr. Sue Tui is her name in ethnomusicology. And she would encourage us to doodle in class. Here we are in, a graduate school seminar where you have less than 20 people and everyone's on their computers. And she's like, you know what, can you guys put your computers away and, try bringing out a notepad and go back to old fashioned. When I started graduate school, I saw the transition from people taking handwritten notes to everyone using a computer. And it was about in 2007, 2008 is when it happened. And she encouraged everybody to, close their laptop and to just doodle. She's like, draw. I want you to make flowers and hearts and shapes and things while I'm talking, because this is encoding the information from your left brain to your right brain. This is how the information gets transferred. And I thought that was so cool because it gave me permission in class to space out. I was always that kid at the back of the class in grade school who was spacing out and like trying to access other dimensions. And she gave me permission to do both, to listen to her, but to take notes and doodle on the side. And let me tell you, I became an A student after that. I went from a B student to an A student, and doodling is magic, really.
That's brilliant. I love that. That's brilliant. Mhm.
And with all these kids being at home, being homeschooled during pandemic, and now transitioning back into the classroom, I hope that they don't lose some of. I homeschooled my daughter for 5 years, so for me it was wonderful to get her away from all of that structure, but I realize some kids really need that. So I think, bringing the intuitive back into the classroom might be something that's, a beautiful thing we can take during this dark time.
Yeah, I hope, and I do believe that we will get to the place where we return to a more natural way of educating. It doesn't seem like it's education now, and what they're teaching. This is a sort of a whole nother topic, but
It is, I know. But, this is, we've got to compete with the other world powers, and, kids in China are so good at math and science, and it's like we've got to keep up with them, and this whole competitive thing. And I'm sorry, until we resolve this competitiveness with each other, we're not going to be accepted into the Galactic Federation. I'm sorry. We're being tested right now, they want to see that, we can get along with each other. And I feel like so many kids are falling behind in math and science in this country. And I'm just wondering, like, what's the end game? Like, why are we racing so fast? We got to slow down and enjoy the moment, be here now, like you said, Ram Dass, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're hell-bent on racing to almost an AI end. It is
racing to Mars.
Yeah, it's like really moving further and further away from that which is the divine feminine, that which is the wisdom of Mother Earth, which is indigenous teaching. I'm also, I work a lot in the shamanic tradition and the shamanic healing tradition. And what I see is people who are steeped in this math and science. And of course we need math and science. We want chemistry that works and buildings that stay.
Right, but not everyone's good at it, like.
but it actually breaks people. And when I look at people who come in who are sick and who are looking for some kind of shamanic healing work, I'm looking at their energy field first. And I'm looking at not necessarily their physical self, but where the problem started. And from a shamanic perspective, all illness starts in the subtle realms and ends in the physical. And when people are steeped in the left brain and so disconnected from what's alive, whether it's Mother Earth or their soul or their connection to the divine, people from my experience develop all kinds of illnesses that are sort of similar, like autoimmune. And autoimmune, when the body attacks itself, it's confused. It's almost as if we're attacking ourselves by attacking our natural divine self, by severing that aspect of from who we are and focusing on this I'm trying to think of the words, but I think you get the gist of what I'm trying to say.
It starts in our emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And, our emotions, like I said, earlier in your reading, moon and mind are the same in Vedic astrology. The moon is the mind because we have an emotional reaction to something, and then we make a decision about how to feel it, how to act on it, right? Feelings are actions, really. We have a judgment that takes place between a feeling and a belief system, okay? And so you are your mind, you are your emotions and your mind are the same. Whereas in Western astrology, we think of the mind just being Mercury, right? But really the moon is the mind, because our emotions determine every judgment and belief that we have. And so when we have an emotional response and we make a judgment about that, those ideas filter down into our physical body. And so that's why all disease starts with the emotions. And that's why I believe treating the emotions is the way to bypass the body and go right to the source. That's why I love aromatherapy. That's why I love the subtle energy healing techniques like Reiki and, music. You know, all three of those things deal right with the emotions. And then when you change your emotional state about something, you change your mind about something. It's amazing how the two, you know, and then if you change your mind about something, then it gets the signal to the body that, okay, this is what we're doing now.
That's really interesting. I see something similar when I'm doing healing work with people, is that they have an idea of something and there's an emotion attached to it, and that emotion can get chronic and eventually calcifies into like a tumor or a blood disease.
Right.
For example, like unfinished business. So say I have someone come in who has been abused by a relative and cannot forgive. And of course, understandably, to forgive the unforgivable seems illogical.
Mhm.
But I can see that it's also causing them a physical problem that could turn into a chronic problem that could take them down. So oftentimes, by being able to connect with that relative who caused abuse on the other side, and we go through the same process of making sure it's that relative and the very high accuracy of information. There's no way I could know. And often I'll see this relative come down on their knee with hat in hand, or if they've really done something terrible, on their belly like a snake, you know, so sorry for what they've done. Because of course we have a different perspective when we lose our physical body and return to the place between lives or heaven, perhaps. We see what we've done in a completely in a more elevated perspective.
Right.
Having that information come into the person who can't uh, shift their consciousness often shifts that consciousness and changes the emotions, like you were saying. Then that changes their field, and there can be a miraculous healing just with the change of an idea.
Yes, an idea. And, you know, and to bring it into a more mundane perspective, you know, like I said, I'm obsessed with genealogy and watching Finding Your Roots on PBS. Oh my gosh, everybody cries because when they see what their ancestors went through and they see how it relates to them, the tears just come. Once you have the knowing, the emotions can be changed.
That's a really good point. I haven't done much in genealogy, but I have done a lot with bloodline illness. So if someone's coming in and they've got a problem, I can actually see how many times these problems, whether it's an illness or a physical illness or a mental illness, has come through many generations, almost like ivy growing
Yeah.
through, and that it, you know, to clear the cords that have connected that, to claim sovereignty from any dark energy, is not only healing the person across the table from me, but it does seem, as incredible as this sounds, to be able to free or positively affect ancestors in the past. I don't know
Yes,
how this could
ancestor
happen,
healing.
but it does. It is an ancestral healing. Time from our perspective is Newtonian. It starts in the past, it marches to the present, and it heads on to the future. But that doesn't seem to be the case in non-ordinary states of consciousness, where all time seems to be happening, or there's a space where it
All
can all
time is
happen.
happening at the same time.
It does seem to be that. That's true. And
It seems to be
somehow
like a circle, and you can enter it wherever you want.
it does seem to be that way, and that that if we that somehow now we can affect the past. Now, can I tell you a story about that?
Absolutely.
So,
Love to hear it.
so about a year and a half ago, I was with one of my daughters in this lovely streamy river, and it was at the sort of the headwaters. So there was lots of stones, and the river got wide, and they were sort of mossy. and slippery, but I'm such a safety nerd. I had my hiking sandals on, you know, I was really conscious and careful. And um, there was this young man, and he was throwing a big boulders into the water, and it would splash up on his young daughter, who was so excited and enjoying it. And I just had this ominous sense, this sense of doom that someone was going to get hurt. And, you know, I'm sort of feebly yelled, please be careful, you know, and you're not going to listen to me. And I told my daughter, I've got to leave. This is making me too anxious. Something bad's going to happen. Little did I know it was going to happen to me. And I picked up, we had chairs and bags, and I had all my stuff. And I must have stumbled. I blocked what happened, but I face planted into a rock. And I got up, and 8 of my front teeth were out of my mouth and dangling by their little roots. A presence came. It was a 10 or 15-foot presence. And it told me to, in sort of words, but not really, to put my teeth back where they belong. So I bent over, and it was a horrible crunching, and I put my teeth back where they belong. And they called 911. And the presence told me, don't go to the hospital. I had a vision that I would be sitting in the waiting room, and it wasn't good. So the sense that I got from this presence was to go to my dentist. And my dentist was an hour away by the time, because we were remote. We were way up in the middle of nowhere in this river place. And they wouldn't let me go, because they were like, well, we call 911. So I was like, look over there. I was like, look over there. And I squealed out with my daughter, and we got down. We were able to get the dentist, who wasn't in Hawaii spending my hard-earned money. He was in town, and he came, and he was able to brace my mouth and fix my lip and whatever. He said it was a miracle. Apparently you only have half an hour to get your teeth back, if that ever happens to anybody, for them to live. I didn't know teeth could live or die. I didn't know gums could live or die. As the story goes, I've got all my teeth are alive. All my gums are alive. My intuition had told me to be taking a mushroom called lion's mane, which actually builds the nerves. And also I talked to my teeth, and I was under a pyramid, and I did some new agey stuff. But anyway, they call it a miracle. And my dentist is not someone who is taken to extravagant expression. But the point I want to make is, I thought that presence was an angel, but I actually think that was me coming back from the future to tell me, because I have meditated and focused on telling myself to put my teeth back in my mouth, and focused on telling myself to go to the dentist since this has happened. So I actually wonder if I had a premonition this was going to happen. Perhaps it was writ in one of the experiences I was to have in this life, and that I had a choice of whether to have dead teeth or live teeth, and that I influenced myself from the future to the past. I can't prove it, but it's what I feel.
The way, I mean, this is not the first story I've heard about miraculous things like this happening. I mean, I'm obsessed with the paranormal and ET and UFO, you guys. You'd have to know. I'm kind of like Data, on Star Trek. I just kind of take it all in. But of course, everyone's going to have their own personal, lens that they're going to look through. But I think it's, really it's you and creator, it's like, people call it angels, they call it, your higher self, but your higher self is connected to creator, right? So for me, it's like creator's voice coming through your higher self, or through your guardian or whatever, right? They are messengers. These are messengers for the divine. And so to me, it's just a proof of creator's existence, that we have this conversation that can be heard. I mean, some people hear actual, voices in their ear telling them, do this, get out of, scoot over into the left lane. There's going to be a car that's going to hit you. And then 2 seconds later, they hit somebody else, right?
Right.
To me, that's just, it's your higher self's connection with the divine, with God, or whatever you want to call it, and whatever strength that comes through is, how pure the connection is, right? Like, are you praying? Are you, listening? Are you really listening on a daily basis? That determines the strength of that voice. And so for you, because you are a medium, you're a channeler, you're an artist, that voice is very strong. And so it told you right away, put those teeth back in your head. You get to the dentist right now, right? So I mean, that was that. This is the way I interpret. Everyone has their own interpretation, right? But to me, this is like, the voice of God coming through you, and that's where we can see God as a very loving, parent, mother, father, whatever you want to call it, that's looking after us.
Yeah, I think that's well put. It's really funny how you put it. But yeah, I actually have met God. Um, it was one of my life-changing experiences. And now I don't know if this is God, or this is my perception of God, but to me it felt like the big guy. And God's a girl. My personal testimony.
Right.
And this experience, I had two experiences that were sort of related, but they were different experiences. But they were both the same God. And this was like a great mother, a beautiful presence that enveloped me like a blanket in unconditional love. And and was accepting, knowing me completely, knowing all the things I'd screwed up on, all my deep flaws that I keep hidden, like I wouldn't want you to know or the audience to know. But this being of light, of incredible intelligence, knew every time I'd messed up and loved me. Just this love was so healing to me, and gave me an unequivocal, absolute, I totally know it for sure, that the game is rigged on a high level. We might have evil in this planet, we might have artificial intelligence from outer space, we, child traffic, all the shadow here in this place of dark and light. But she made it so clear to me that on a higher level, the game's rigged and God's in charge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and when I do astrology readings, I mean, like when, reading the dasha cycles, the planetary cycles, I mean, it reads out like a book. You cannot make this stuff up, you guys. You wrote a blueprint with creator before you came here, and you're playing it out, and how you respond to it's your free will. So, just get over it.
Your reading you did for me, I just want to shout out here, was so stunningly accurate. And not only were you able to pinpoint aspects of my personality and my true nature, but also my early childhood, my spiritual development, my family dynamics, my professional growth. And I'm assuming what you foresee in the future is accurate too, but I'm so impressed and grateful for your session. So
Thank you. Thank
you
you
did
so
a
much.
beautiful job.
Thank you. And likewise, I mean, I was blown away by your accuracy. I mean, it's just, a lot of people, I think, can be, skeptical or scared, of a psychic reading. And you just were so nurturing and comforting and so inviting and warm that, it was just effortless. So, I mean, I highly suggest Jane DeForest for your next psychic reading. I'm so blown away by your talent and your beauty and just the love from your heart. She truly wants to help you and just help us all along on this path. You know, it's not easy.
No.
We have to be forgiving to each other and just support each other, you know, because I mean, let's face it, we're all sinners, we're all screwed up, and we're just here to help each other try to just, you know, get through it a little bit easier and with less difficulty. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you so much.
I'm so pleased that we finally got to have this reading today.
Thank
And if you guys want to go to her website, it is janeinspiration.com. And you can find out, you know, all the information about her book, about the courses that she's teaching. She's been teaching a few. I think, is developing a new one. And it's just an ongoing, you know, unfoldment of spiritual teachings and knowledge on her website. So please visit it. And thank you so much for joining me. And I'm sure I'm feeling spirits telling me that this is not going to be the last interview, that there will be more uh, as we are unfolding this crazy process on planet Earth. We need more beautiful guides like Jane. So again, thank you so much.
you so much.
Namaste.